Hi guys, welcome back to this new video of Next.js 13, and I will be building this awesome weather application. I've already created this functionality and similar UI using other technologies as well in my channel that I have created this weather app using Node Express. If you are a backend developer, you can check out that video and learn Node Express, how to render the UI, how we can create a proper folder structure for building these applications using Node Express. I've already created this functionality and UI using the vanilla JavaScript. If you are a beginner developer learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript, you can check out that video. In this video, I'm going to be building the same application but with different technology, with different mindset, with different folder structure, and that is the Next.js 13. And this is the VS Code that I've just opened. So I have the latest version of Node and npm installed in my system. So I'll be using the npx and I will write the create next app at latest. All right, so it will ask me to name the project and then I will show you. So weather next 13, I will hit enter. I will go with the TypeScript here. Okay, so I can then go with the ESLint, Tailwind CSS, source directory, and then app router, this one. All right, so it's going to download all the dependencies required to run the Next.js project. All right, so first of all, if I click on it, let's go to the source folder. I'm gonna go inside the global.css. I will just be removing everything from here. Okay, let's remove everything, and I will just go into the page.tsx file and I will be removing everything inside it. Rather, let's add the div tag here like this. All right, so currently it's showing some kind of errors because the dependencies are being installed. So let's save this file now. So this is the home component and we have this global.css empty, we have this layout. All right, so we actually don't need to update this layout file. I will only be working on this page.tsx file to actually start building this UI, call an API of open weather API, and then I will fetch the data of weather of different cities and also of the current location. If I just show you, if I refresh this page, you will see that it will show the loading and it's actually detecting my current location of my system. And then it's going to call an API and fetch the data of weather of my current location. Once it shows up, I can actually select and enter any city in the world like the London. I can hit enter or click on this search button, and then it's going to actually call an API again and show the weather data for that particular city. All right, so now let's go ahead and start working on this home component. So first of all, I'm going to come here inside this. So first of all, I'm going to create a couple of state variables. So weather data, I'm going to write the set weather data, and I'll be using a React hook called the use state. Okay, so this has been imported above, as you can see, and initial value I'm going to be giving up the null. Okay, after this, let's add a new state variable called the city and the set city use state, and the initial value I can give it to anything, but you can give like Lahore, you can set anything initial value to it. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create a new function. And first of all, since we are using the use state, by default in Next.js 13, all the components are server-side components. So to actually use the use state, we need to make the component use client by writing the use client within a string at the top of this file. All right, so now first of all, let's try to actually add some data over here. So let's say the h1 weather app. Okay, let's try to run the project and see if it works well. Let's go inside the weather project and I'm going to run it by writing the npm run dev command in my terminal. All right, so it's working on the localhost 3000, and let me refresh it. All right, so it needs to be showing this weather app. All right, so our app is working fine without any error. Okay, so first of all, what we need to do is we actually need to show up, get the current date, and that particular logic is going to be fetching the current date of the system or the network which is being used from any other place in the whole world. So first of all, I'm going to create a new function. So we can actually get the current date from that API, but I'm just showing you that we can detect the current date from a particular function as well. So get current date. So this function is going to be responsible for using the date class of the JavaScript and compile the date within a meaningful format. But currently, let's leave it like this. And inside it, I'm going to just call it get current date function. Okay. Now, first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a use effect hook. So that use effect hook is going to be responsible for calling a function, and that function is going to be calling an API which I will be building just now, and that API is going to be calling a third-party API for fetching the data of that weather. Okay, so inside this component, home component, I'm going to create an async function. Okay, and the fetch data, this is going to take the city, so I can pass it the city name. Okay, and let's give it a string type to it, and inside it I can add the try catch block because I'll be using the async await function to call the API which I just need to build yet. Okay, so this catch I can write the console.log error because if in case there is an error. Okay, then I can write the response equals to await fetch, and inside it I can actually call an API. So since we are actually building the API directly in our Next.js 13 project, and it is going to be in the same URL localhost 3000. Okay, and the API route that I will be building will be like the /API /weather question mark. I will be using the query param, and here I'll be passing an address. So address equals to plus city name. Okay, so this has to be like this. So this is going to actually call that API and return the response in this response variable. All right, and after this I'm going to actually use the JSON data equals to await response.json and then dot data, and because the API of open weather map is going to return us an object, and inside that object we have another property called the data, and this data is going to have the all the weather information. That's why I've added this data and store it inside it. And then I'm going to actually use the set weather data function to actually use the JSON data variable directly in that state variable over here, weather data. Okay, now this weather data will be having all the information of that particular city, the weather details, which we can use to actually show it in the UI. Okay, now below this, let's try to use the use effect hook, because whenever the component mounts, I want this function to be called automatically. So I can write the fetch data, and then I can actually call that function and pass it any city to it. So let's try to actually pass the particular city. Initially, let me go ahead and call something like this. Okay, and I'm going to add an empty array over here. If you want to learn the best practices of use effect hooks, check out my video best practices in React in my React playlist of my channel. That video is very important if you are just learning Next.js or the React. Okay, syntax error, something like that. So this is showing the console log statement over here. The reason it's showing is because I'm using an extension Console Ninja, and we don't need to go ahead in the console window of the browser to see all these errors because we don't have this API. That's why it's throwing an error. So let's go ahead and create this API first. So in Next.js 13 or even the previous version of Next.js, we were able to create the APIs directly in Next.js. So for that, I'm gonna go inside my app directory, and I can create a new folder, and we actually need to create the folder with the same name called an API. And then we can see that we actually using the API/weather, we need to create another folder with the same name which we are using over here. So this is the weather currently. So this is actually the file. We actually need to create a folder here. Okay, so I'll be writing like API. This is the folder have been created. Let's create another folder, weather. Okay, and inside the weather, I'm going to create a new file, and that is going to be the route.ts. Okay, inside it, I can actually first of all import next request, and then I'm going to call the next response from the next server. All right, so in Next.js 13 we are given with the different methods like the get, put, post. Since we only call the API to get the response, and it needs to be exporting from here, I'll be using the async function, and in the capital form we can write the get, post, patch, put, add, whatever we want to write, and this is going to take the request from here. Okay, first of all, I can actually get the search params, and this is going to be from the new URL request.url. all right, so this has to be the URL here. All right, so let's try to add next request and response, but I'm going to add the any after that because I'm using the TypeScript. Okay, so from here in the search params, as we know that we are actually passing the address as a query param, so we can fetch the address from that search param using the search param.get function. So I can write the const address equals to search param.get and then the address. Okay, so this has been added. Let's add the URL equals to this, and I'm going to check if the address exists. Then I'm going to construct that URL. So for constructing that URL, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy paste a code from my notes. So this is the URL that I need to construct, and after that I'm going to add an else, and inside it I'll be constructing another URL. Okay, for a particular city of the current location. Okay, currently if address exists, it means that we want to fetch the weather data using an address. An else statement will be used if we don't have the current if we don't have the address actually, but whenever the application loads first time, we want to detect the current location and pass that current location on this API, and this API needs to construct this URL based upon the latitude and longitude of the current location. Currently it's for the address, we will be using the latitude longitude for that. So I can actually copy paste that URL directly over here for now. Okay, let's add. So we have this latitude longitude rather than passing the address over here. Currently we have not detected the latitude longitude in our page.tsx file, which I'll be doing. So currently we can actually get the latitude longitude from here. So let me copy and paste that so we don't get any error. So I can actually write the lat and this will be the query param we can actually pass from our component, the client side component. Okay, and I can write the latitude, so the error will be gone over here. We can actually copy this exact word and paste it over here. Okay, so it is not actually required that all of these query params should be available. It is just the logic that I'm building. Okay, after this we can actually use that fetch function to actually call the API using this URL. I'm just going to show you that how I'm generating this particular app ID. What you need to do is you just need to go to the openweathermap.org/API, and here you actually need to log in. Okay, log in with your account or sign up. I've already logged in. And what I need to do, I need to click on this and my API keys. Here you actually need to generate a new API key by naming it anything you want, and click on the generate, and you are given with the any API key. Don't use mine key because I'll be deleting these API keys after this video. I'm just using it just for this video. Okay, so here this is how I'm actually generating that. This URL, you can actually copy this from here, and I'm actually using this the same one, but rather than adding address, I'm using the lat long and app ID after that, same app ID like over here. Okay, so now I hope that you have understood. Response equals to await, fetch, and then the URL. So this is going to call this API, the URL, and it's going to get the data within the response. So whoever is calling this particular API, the get, is going to return get the data. So I can actually use the data equals to await response.json, and now I can use the next response package that I have actually imported at the top to actually return the data in the form of an object like this. Okay, so let's save it, and we have this one we are actually using. All right, so we have actually passed it. Now we can actually directly test this particular API in the browser, since this API is the public, and we can actually pass the different address to fetch the data. Now I'm just going to copy this particular URL, and I'm just going to paste it in the browser, and after that I can actually pass any string in the URL over here. So this is the complete API URL which we have built here. So our project is running, and I'm just going to hit enter for that. So let's hit enter, and yes guys, you can see that it has actually called this API directly over here, and it has actually returned this data over here. All right, so now from this page, whenever this application is going to be mounted using this use effect, it's going to call that API to fetch the data of by calling this API, and then we are setting up that state using this function. Okay, so we are done with this route file. I'm just going to close this up. Okay, and we have actually tested that API is working fine as well. So let's go over here, and we are actually don't have the UI to actually see the data. So currently you can see that it's showing the syntax error here. Is it the syntax error? Let me see. We have this one, console.error. We have this particular function. I don't think we have the syntax error, so let's try to save this file now. Let's try to refresh. So this API should be called now, but we don't have anything to test yet. I'm just going to actually build up some UI to actually see the data. So I'm going to come here, and I'm going to actually name this one main. Let's give it the class name, and I'm going to use the style.main, which I yet need to build in my CSS file, okay, which I will be building over here. All right, so this is the main. Let's remove this, and inside this main I'm actually going to create an article, and it will be having the class name, and its class name will be the styles.widget. Styles yet needs to be created, so styles.widget. Okay, let's go ahead and create a new file within the app directory, and I'm going to name it page.module.css. Okay, and this file I'm going to be importing at the top of this page. So let's add that, so we don't have any error like that. So styles from page.module.css. all right, so there won't be any error showing up over here. So we have these styles here. All right, so let's save it. So we have this article. Let's close this article as well, so there won't be any error over here. Okay, inside this article I need to create the form, but before actually creating the form, I'm actually going to load up the data. So for loading up the data, I'm going to actually use, first of all, let's add the h1, and inside it I'm actually going to use the weather data dot, and what I can do is weather data dot name. Let's try to print this out. We have this weather data, and it's actually showing over here. Okay, so this is just a TypeScript error, you can just ignore that. Let's refresh, and now you can see that it's actually showing the Lahore, and this weather data is actually the API data. So this is the API data, so it means that whenever our page actually loading, this function is going to get called, uh, and the API is going to get called, and here the weather data is getting updated, and because of that we have this city available over here. So our API is working pretty well here. All right, so now it's time to actually build the UI. So for that, I'm going to actually come here. Let's remove this. Okay, so first of all, let's check if the weather data exists, and if weather data dot weather exists, and weather data, and we have an array of weather here as well. So I'm just going to add the question mark and then the parentheses. Okay, and after that we can have different parentheses here. We can have the div, and this div is going to be the class name of type styles dot place. Okay, and I can actually show the loading after that, loading like this. All right, so there seems an error here. So we have this weather data, uh, and weather data dot weather. We have this weather data here, and we actually needs to have empty divs over here. So I can add this one. Okay, now inside it, let's add another div. And first of all, I can have another div inside it for showing that icon of the weather, the cloud icon. And outside this div, I can have another div for the data of the weather. Okay, so this one. So let's first build up that div. So I can have the class name, and I will be having the styles dot icon and weather info. Okay, so we have added the class name to this. Let's add the class name to this one, so we can have the styles dot weather icon. Okay, so this div is going to be showing the icon, the dynamic icon, since the icon I'll be using is for the built-in external the third-party library to show the different weather icons, but the string, the name of the weather, the type or the condition of the weather coming from this particular API will not always be matching with the third party API of the cloud icons. So for that, I'll just show you how we can dynamically load that up, but you can build a different array of all that cloud yourself. So for now, I'm just going to add the class name, and using this class name, I can have the WI day, and after that I can add the weather condition. So one of the weather condition that is supported by the third party cloud icon library is the cloudy, and we can have the different strings after that. Okay, so let's save it for now. And after that we have this div, And this div is going to, the reason it's not showing the cloud over here because we have not included that third party library yet in our CSS file. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to add import few of that file. So I'm just going to add these two lines. One is the Google Fonts, which I'll be using. Another one is the Cloudflare, which is going to be giving us different weather icons. Okay, let's save it. And now you can see that this cloud icon is showing over here. Let me zoom in. Uh, and yes, it's actually coming up from this particular third party package. All right. So I'll be modifying it just now, but before that, let's show the actual data of that weather. Okay. So inside this div, let's add the class name, and this is going to be the styles dot weather info. Okay, and then inside this div I'll be having another div, and this div is going to be taking the temperature, so I can have different temperature here. Let's add the span. All right, so I can have the weather data dot main dot temp. Okay, so this is actually storing the different temperature for that. We can see that we have this weather data dot main property here, and then inside it we have this temp property, and it is actually containing this temperature. Okay, and after this div I can have another div, and this div is going to be showing the description of the weather. So I can write the weather data dot weather 0 question mark dot description, and I will be actually making it the uppercase. So to uppercase is a built-in JavaScript function. All right, these errors are showing because of the TypeScript. You can ignore that, it will not throw any error for now. So let's save it. Let's go to actual. You can see that this is showing the temperature and this is showing the description of that weather. Okay, we can show the same description dynamically, replacing this cloudy over here to change the cloud icons if it is supported by that Cloudflare third-party API for that particular icon. Okay, so we have this div, we have actually shown that. Let's try to save that. Now outside this div, I'm actually going to create. So first of all, we have this div and we have this div. Okay, and then I'm actually going to wrap the whole stuff over here inside another div. We have this div, we have this div. Let me go through. We have then this div icon. Okay, so I'm just going to cut this and paste it inside this div. Okay, and parallel to this div I'm going to have another couple of divs. So I can have this div for the weather name, so I can have the weather data dot name. Let's copy this, and I'm going to add this one for the date, which I will be fetching from let's try to see if we have the current date available over here. So you can see that we have this time zone date. We don't have the current date over here, so we have to manually fetch that from it. I've already created a variable above that I just showed you, and I'll be using that date variable for showing the date. So let's go ahead at the top and see this one. Okay, so I'm using this particular variable to actually show. Let's try to return something over here initially. Okay, so you can see it is showing the date. Let's go ahead. So you can see that it's showing icon, temperature, description, city, and this particular string that I just need to modify. But first of all, let's try to give it some classes. So I'm going to give it the class name, and I'm going to add the styles dot place, and let's give the class name to the uh, styles dot date. Okay, so I've given this class name to it, and now I actually needed to bring it like this. Okay, now let's try to modify this temperature. This temperature is not in correct. 302 is not correct, so I'll just be modifying that. I will be actually deducting this temperature with some value. So using the parentheses, I'm going to add the parentheses here. So I'll be adding the minus 273.5. Let's close the parentheses. Then I'm only going to show the two decimals after the point of that value, in case if the API returns more than two values after the decimal point. Okay, and after this I also need to show the small circle above that, just like the exponent in maths. So I can use the string function from the JavaScript. So string from char code, and I can pass the 176 inside it. Okay, let's go ahead and save it and see if it works well. Let's try to remove this parenthesis here. Now you can see that this temperature is correct, and it is actually showing the small circle here as well. All right, so we have actually modified everything. Let's try to modify this one as well. So we can see that we have this description here, and we can actually use this description to actually modify this cloudy over here. So I'm going to add a condition here. So that condition will be having if the description is equals to fog or rain, then I'm going to actually append this string with that fog and rain, because I know Cloudflare support fog and rain to be replaced over here. Let's try to change that and just showing you. Let's save it. Now you can see that the rain icon is showing that, and we have the fog is showing as well. So this will be the default. If the description is not equals to rain or fog, then by default I'm just showing the cloud icon. I cannot handle all the description for all the hundreds of icons available over there. So for that I'm just going to actually copy paste the code snippet over here in the I over here. So you can see here I've actually checked if the description is equals to rain, and if the description is equals to fog, then I'm actually appending this particular place with this one, weather data, weather the description. Otherwise the default icon will be showing over here. So currently in this particular location there is no rain or no fog, that's why it's showing the cloudy over here. All right, so I'm actually done with this particular UI, and I will be modifying this by building the form here. Let's first go ahead and add some CSS over here. So I don't want to teach the CSS, it will take a lot of time. I'll just be copy pasting from my notes. I'll just be scrolling down so you can actually see this. Pause the video and you can write it down yourself. So we have this main class here, and then we'll be having this widget. So we have this class for the main, we have this data for the widget. Let me scroll to the right so you can see what is written over here. Okay, then we have this weather location button, weather location input focus, we have this weather, and then the weather icon input field, and then the search button, we have this icon and weather info, temperature, place, weather condition, and then the date. So if I save it, you can see that this is the UI which is built and it's looking cool. One thing more, we don't have this UI being applied, the styles for this temperature and the description. Let's go ahead and see. So we have this div and we have actually missed applying different styles to it. So I'm gonna go over here and I'm going to add the class of temperature to it. So let's add, and I'm going to add the temperature. Let's save it. And now you can see the temperature is looking good. We need to add the description as well. So I'm going to add here, and this has to be the weather condition. Okay, let's save it. And now you can see it is white and the font is changed as well. So if I refresh, you will see that it is going to call an API with the fixed Lahore location, and it's going to actually call the data and showing over here. First of all, let me fetch the current date. So from this function, I can actually modify this, and inside it, I can actually add different logic. So first of all, I'm going to add the current date equals to the new date. Okay, this particular date is going to return a long integer. This is not the actual date. We need to fetch the different date as well as the day name or a month name, you can say. And there is a logic. I'm just going to add some snippet of code that I'll just be showing you. So first of all, we are actually fetching the option. We have actually given it the month long because we want to get the month in the form of alphabets. By default, just like this get date, we have the get month function as well, but get month function return us the month number in the integer. To actually convert that month number into that long string of that alphabet, we actually need to pass these options to convert the current date using these options in the month name, and then the month name is going to have that thing. If I save it, and you can see that this is the current date which is being showing over here, the 3rd September. All right, so we are done with the getting the current date, and now it's time to actually add the form. And using that form, I will be actually calling this function. Okay, first of all, let's try to comment this out. Okay, comment this out. Let's try to refresh, and it will not show anything to it because this function is not being called currently. I'm going to create a new form over here, and this form is going to be like this. I've already added the styles. So inside this article, I'm going to add the form. Okay, let's add a class to this form. So I'm going to add the class name, and this is going to be the styles dot weather location. Okay, there has to be some meaningful styles, but since I've already added the CSS, this one weather location, this will be added like this. So inside this form, I can have the couple of stuff. So I can have the input will be having the class name, and this is going to be the styles dot input field. Okay, and after this, let's first close this up, and after this class name, I will be adding the placeholder, and this is going to be the enter city name. Okay, and then I'm going to add the type equals to text. ID, I can give it an ID if I want to. So I can have city name, I can have the name for that. So city name is going to be the name, and then I can have the on change event. So this on change is going to take an event property, and from here I can set that city. Set city e.target.value. This set city is I've already defined, and this whenever the new value is going to get changed inside this input, this value of city is going to get updated automatically. Okay, so after this one, I think nothing needs to be added. So you can see the styles have been added, and this is something added already. After this input, I can have the button. So let's add the class name to it. So I can have the styles dot search button. So this has to be the search button as the name in the CSS file, and let's give it the type submit. Okay, like this. Let's add search here. All right, so we have this text box and the button have been added, and since we have added this type submit, and we can add the on submit property to this form, so we can have the on submit property. It will be having this. Okay, and inside it, let's try to first do the prevent default, and then I'm going to call that function which I have created, fetch data, with the updated city name, since we have the updated city name within that city property of the state, because I'm changing its value from here. All right, so I think I'm done. Let's try to add a new city. Let's say Sydney. Is it a right spelling? Let's hit enter. No, it's not. I'm going to add Islamabad in Pakistan, and yes, I have pressed enter, and it has actually fetched the temperature, clear sky from here, September. And let's try to add the Karachi and click on the search button. Okay, so this has been added and its temperature have been fetched. So over this functionality is working fine. We can have the hover effect on this button as well if we want. Let's try to directly add this over here, so we can have this one, since we have already have this class search button. So I'm gonna go copy this. Where is the search button? Here. So I can write search button colon hover. I can write the cursor pointer. Let's save it, and now you can see that cursor is being changed over here. So let's go ahead, and we have this fetch data. Inside this use effect, I want to auto detect my current location, and when the current location is auto detected, I will be calling this API again, which I have already created, this one, and it will automatically handle if the address is available in the URL, or the latitude longitude are available from these params. Okay, so for actually detecting the current location, we can use the navigator property of the browser. So the navigator property, we have first we actually needs to check if the current location is allowed from the browser or not, whoever is using our application. So I'm gonna come here, and I'm going to first check if geolocation in navigator exists, means that if the current location detection is allowed from the browser. I've already allowed from my browser, but if you don't have, you can actually enable it to test this functionality. I can use the navigator dot geolocation dot get current position within these parentheses. Okay, inside this it will give us the position, arrow function, curly braces, and then we have got the latitude longitude from this position, position dot coords actually. All right, and after this I can actually build up another function. So I'm just going to copy this one and paste it here, so I can actually fetch data by coordinates. Okay, I can call this one, and it's going to take the latitude and the longitude. So I can use the latitude of number, and the longitude is going to be the number. All right, and this is not going to be the address now, this is going to be the lat long. Let me use this notation, and I can write lat equals to dollar sign, and I can pass the latitude, and after this I can actually pass the long and then the longitude. I can close this string. So this is going to get called, and it's going to return us this data. State is going to get updated, and this is for the error. So I don't think we need to update anything else here. uh, I'm going to actually call this function over here. So I can write the fetch data by coordinates, and I can pass the latitude and then the longitude to it. All right, and after this we can also add some error handling if we want to, like this arrow, and here we can simply print this error. Okay, so this use effect is automatically going to get triggered one time. There is no dependency, it's not empty. So let's save it. Now let's try to refresh, and yes, it's actually detecting my current location and it's going to show the data. You can see that there is no city entered here. I'm going to add a new city over here. So we have this London. Hit enter, and it has called that API and it's showing over here. And then we can have another location, let's say Mumbai from India. And yes, it is actually working. If I refresh, it's going to detect my current location and it needs to get the data of this. This is looking great, guys, and I hope that you are understanding how the logic is working over here. Since we are using TypeScript, that's why it's showing error over here. But we can add different typings like this. So let's go over here. We have this one data, and I can pass any to it, and now you can see that error is gone. Any means that we don't care whatever the data comes from here, but this is not a good practice. You actually need to create an actual interface. I'm going to be creating a new video to from beginner to advanced interface types, nested interfaces in TypeScript within the Next.js 13. Some people get confused how to use TypeScript. It's pretty simple. Check out my video, and for that do subscribe my channel so you get the notification for all the upcoming videos, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Like this video, comment below if you have any questions. See you in the next video.